The movie opens in a modern apartment where the bodies of two men lie down dead on the floor. The silence is shattered by a loud, ominous knock at the door, creating a tense atmosphere. Eddie, standing on the balcony, is on the verge of jumping, contemplating ending it all. Just as he's about to make his move, his neighbor suddenly gets shot, but Eddie quickly realizes that something far more serious is unfolding. The scene flashes back to several years before. Eddie, now disheveled, sits in a bar drinking alcohol, trying to convince others he's an accomplished writer, but no one believes him. Back at his apartment, Eddie struggles to write, delayed by procrastination as days turn into weeks and months without progress. Meanwhile, Eddie's girlfriend ends their relationship, telling him it lacks depth and meaning. She reminds him of his past with Melissa and, despite his attempts to change her mind, leaves him after a brief conversation at a cafe. Lost in thought and unsure of his next move, Eddie wanders aimlessly through the streets. By chance, he runs into his former brother-in-law Werner, whom he hasn't seen in 9 years. The encounter is awkward for Eddie, who feels uneasy, but Werner remains surprisingly relaxed. Noticing Eddie's disheveled appearance, Werner comments on his situation, implying that Eddie seems to have hit rock bottom. Despite his discomfort, Eddie agrees to join Werner for a drink. After some small talk, Werner suddenly shifts the conversation, claiming he has a solution for Eddie's problems. He reaches into his jacket, and Eddie expects to be handed some cash. Instead, Werner pulls out a small vial of an unfamiliar drug, catching Eddie off guard. Eddie immediately rejects the idea, insisting he doesn't want to use drugs. But Werner assures him that this isn't just any drug, it will allow him to access his brain's full potential, claiming we only use 20% of it. Before Eddie can protest, Werner gets a phone call, hands Eddie a business card, and quickly departs. Lost in thought and reminiscing about Melissa, Eddie approaches his apartment building, torn between skepticism and curiosity. Ultimately, he decides to take the drug. As he makes his way upstairs, he runs into his neighbor, Valerie, who greets him with hostility, ranting about trivial things. Suddenly, the drug kicks in, and Eddie's mind sharpens. He calmly asks Valerie what's really bothering her, pointing out that she doesn't need to treat him with such disdain, even if she dislikes him. His memory becomes razor sharp, and he recalls every detail about her life, even mentioning a problem she's been having at law school, leaving her bewildered and suspicious of how he knows. Impressed by his newfound clarity, Eddie helps Valerie with her studies, leading to an unexpected, passionate encounter. Returning to his apartment, he's astonished by his transformation. He tidies up his once chaotic space with remarkable efficiency, his mind now crystal clear and hyper-focused. He sits down to write and effortlessly produces pages of work with a level of skill and precision he's never experienced before, thanks to the drug's powerful effects. The next morning, Eddie wakes up to find his mind no longer in its heightened state. The drug has worn off, leaving him with the familiar mental fog. Despite this, he knows he must deliver the manuscript to his publisher. Initially skeptical of his sudden productivity, she eventually agrees to review it. After their meeting, Eddie returns home to find 3 voicemail messages. Listening to them, he hears his publisher's voice, filled with excitement and admiration for his work, urging him to call her back. Determined to secure more of the drug, Eddie goes to Werner's apartment and finds him with a bruised face, suggesting he's been in a fight. Concerned, Eddie asks what happened, but Werner dismisses it, saying it's better if Eddie doesn't know. Werner quickly realizes Eddie is there for more of the drug and reveals it's called NZT-48, admitting it isn't FDA approved despite what he previously implied. Werner then asks Eddie to retrieve his suit and grab some breakfast, and Eddie agrees, hoping it will lead to more of the drug. However, when Eddie returns, he finds Werner's apartment door open and discovers Werner's dead body inside. Stunned, Eddie calls the police but, before they arrive, frantically searches the apartment for the stash of NZT-48. He finds it hidden in the stove and, knowing the implications of being connected to Werner's death, puts on gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints and ensure he doesn't become a suspect. Eddie is at the police station, being questioned about Werner's death. During the tense interrogation, Melissa calls, coldly cutting ties with him and even refusing contact at the funeral. Once released, Eddie discovers he has access to Werner's cash and the remaining NZT-48. He takes the drug, sharpening his mind, and quickly adopts a new identity. Within 4 days, he submitted his notes, completing what seemed impossible. His abilities grow rapidly. He learns to play the piano in 3 days, masters a new language and wins the poker table. Eddie's confidence soars as he mingles with influential people, pitching ideas and receiving a lucrative offer. This new lifestyle introduces him to wealthy friends, private jets, and luxurious homes, all while indulging in NZT-48's power. However, Eddie's ambitions outgrow his resources, and his supply of the drug decreases. Desperate for money, He exploits the down market but falls short, eventually turning to loan sharks to fund his next move. Eddie got the money from the loan sharks, but the man warns him of what will happen if he doesn't return the money, not killing but tutoring him. Then he leaves him. Eddie is now at Kevin Doyle's office, amazed by the high-stakes atmosphere. He quickly doubles their investment, impressing everyone with his sharp decisions. Later that evening, he finds 19 voicemails, with one from Kevin informing him of a meeting with Carl Van Loon, a big name in finance. Eddie reconnects with his ex, Lindy, over dinner, where she's stunned by his transformation, style, confidence, and fluent Italian. Their evening rekindles past intimacy, leading to them spending the night together. In the following days, they enjoy time outdoors, but Eddie starts feeling like someone is following him. As a meeting with Carl Van Loon approaches, Kevin tries to prepare Eddie, but Eddie, confident and self-assured, believes he knows exactly how to handle it. During the meeting, Eddie confidently showcases his research and pattern recognition skills, even claiming he's developed a powerful formula for success. Impressed, Carl invites him to lunch and later hands Eddie company data for analysis. Eddie's rapid, sharp analysis further impresses Carl, leading to another meeting being scheduled. Eddie takes a walk to explore the endless possibilities ahead. However, his thoughts soon spiral into hallucinations, blurring the line between reality and fantasy. He eventually finds himself in a bar, losing himself in the music and dancing with a woman. Surrounded by others, Eddie's excitement is dampened by the persistent feeling that someone is following him. Later, Eddie finds himself in a brawl at a train station. Under the influence of NZT-48, he recalls fight scenes from movies and expertly overpowers his opponents. The next morning, the drug's effects wear off, leaving Eddie disoriented and drained. Desperate for another dose, he searches but finds none. Determined to push forward, he tries to analyze the documents Carl had given him, but without the drug's enhancements, he struggles with the task. The next day, Kevin calls to check if Eddie is ready for an upcoming meeting. Feeling off balance and unprepared, Eddie tries to back out, but Kevin insists he attends. Reluctantly, Eddie goes to the meeting but struggles to focus. During the meeting, a news report about a woman found dead catches his eye. Eddie recognizes her as someone he was recently with but can't remember if he was involved in her death. Overwhelmed, Eddie abruptly leaves the meeting, exiting the hotel and leaving Carl behind. Back at his apartment, Eddie gets a call from Melissa, who asks to meet but then refuses when he presses her. This triggers Eddie's memory of Werner's notebook, leading him to contact the people listed in it. Then, he discovers that many are seriously ill or already dead. During one call, the man who has been following Eddie answers, taunting him and making it clear that Eddie is being hunted. Terrified, Eddie manages to run just as the man tries to catch him. In a surprising twist, Eddie meets with Melissa at a cafe. She looks visibly uncomfortable and reveals that she has been taking NZT-48 for 2 years. She warns Eddie of the severe and potentially fatal withdrawal symptoms if he stops taking the drug, leaving him with the grim realization that his life is in serious danger. As Eddie heads back to his apartment, he's ambushed by the loan sharks who have been hunting him for the money he owes. They forcibly drag him inside, and one of them notices the vial of NZT-48 in Eddie's hand and snatches it away. Desperate to avoid more trouble, Eddie rushes to the bank to withdraw the borrowed money, intending to pay off the loan sharks. Feeling too sick to return home, Eddie goes to Lindy's office. Although hesitant, he confesses everything, explaining the situation he's in. He pleads with her to retrieve the drug, but the pills are at her place, not his apartment. Lindy retrieves the drug and heads back to Eddie but soon realizes someone is following her. Panicked, she calls Eddie, telling him she's being chased. As she tries to escape, the pursuer catches up and opens her car door. She manages to run on foot, asking 2 nearby men for help, but the man stabs them both. Desperate to help, Eddie urges Lindy to take one of the pills herself. Despite initial hesitation, she swallows the drug. Within seconds, the NZT-48 kicks in, sharpening her senses and enhancing her abilities, allowing her to outmaneuver her pursuer and escape to safety. Lindy, struggling with the effects of the drug, suggests parting ways with Eddie. However, Eddie convinces her to stay, promising to stop using the drug once his plan is complete. Reluctantly, she agrees and leaves, accepting his decision without further argument. Meanwhile, the loan sharks return, demanding more of the drug from Eddie. He complies, handing over the drug but firmly warns that this will be the last time. Despite his warning, it's clear they won't stop pursuing him. Recognizing the escalating danger, Eddie hires security guards, giving them detailed instructions to ensure his safety, knowing he can't afford to take any risks. Later, Eddie returns to Carl and apologizes for his earlier behavior, explaining that he was unwell. Carl, understanding, forgives him and gives him another chance. Eddie seizes the opportunity, delivering a presentation that impresses Carl, paving the way for future projects. Determined to secure a steady supply of the drug, Eddie approaches a chemist to replicate it. The chemist warns the process could take 12 to 18 months, but Eddie offers a generous incentive, a $2 million if it can be done within 6 months. While having lunch, Eddie is approached by a detective who informs him he's a suspect in a woman's murder. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Eddie hires lawyer Morris Brandt to clear his name. Meanwhile, Eddie supports Carl in a crucial meeting with Hank Atwood. During the meeting, Atwood's health suddenly deteriorates, forcing them to reschedule. Returning home, Eddie finds his apartment trashed and decides to move into a new, luxurious home. He later encounters the loan shark, who demands more pills, threatening to expose Eddie if he refuses. The next day, Atwood misses the rescheduled meeting. His wife informs Eddie and Carl that Atwood has been hospitalized but assures them the contract will be signed. Eddie recognizes Atwood's driver as the man who had been following him recently, realizing Atwood's condition is likely fatal due to running out of the drug. As Carl presses Eddie for answers, Eddie begins to feel the drug wearing off but discovers he's out of pills. Just then, he receives a mysterious package from his security guards, heightening the tension. Back at his apartment, Eddie watches the news about Atwood but turns off the TV. Suddenly, the loan sharks burst in, demanding more of the drug. Desperate, Eddie considers killing himself but remembers a hidden tablet. As he reaches for it, the loan sharks force their way in, and he drops the tablet. The loan sharks restrain Eddie, preparing to torture him. Unexpectedly, Eddie stabs the loan shark, then pretends to be dead by drinking some of the man's blood, buying time to overpower the remaining guards. Eddie tracks down the man chasing him before and, with his help, retrieves the remaining NZT tablets from Morris Brandt. A year later, Eddie is running for Senate. Carl visits, revealing he knows about Eddie's drug use and has shut down the lab. Carl offers more NZT-48 if Eddie works for him, but Eddie, confident, declines. As they leave for lunch, Eddie asserts that he no longer needs Carl. The movie ends with Eddie and Lindy enjoying lunch, with Eddie casually ordering in Chinese, showing his mastery of the drug's effects. With that, the movie ends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.